There are places in this world where the boundary between what we can see and what lurks just beyond our vision begins to blur. Places where the air grows thick with unseen presence, where shadows shift in ways they shouldn't. In Japan, when people vanish without explanation, it's not just written off as a tragic accident. It's called Kamikakushi, literally being spirited away. People disappear without leaving a single trace, as if they've slipped between the very cracks of our reality. But what if these aren't just old folk tales? What if something or someone is still taking people even today? For centuries, stories have echoed through Japan's mist-shrouded mountains and abandoned shrines. They speak of beings that lure unsuspecting travelers into hidden realms. The Tengu with their wings and long noses, watching from mountain perches, waiting for lone travelers to pass by. The cunning kitsune foxes, weaving illusions that lead victims deeper and deeper into the forest. And then there are the faceless spirits that exist in the blind spots of our perception, watching, waiting. Those who vanish aren't simply lost, they're taken, pulled from our world. And those who do return, something about them is different. In the feudal era, entire villages would whisper of children who wandered too far and returned days, even years later, untouched by time. They'd speak strange languages, their eyes distant as if they'd witnessed things no human was meant to see. Their families celebrated their return, of course, but deep down, a cold fear took root. What came back wasn't really their child anymore. Some of these disappearances were actually documented, etched into history like warnings to those who might wander where they shouldn't. Take the vanishing of Oyama in 1907. A young boy disappeared near a sacred shrine only to return years later. His family had aged, his childhood friends had grown into men, yet the boy hadn't changed at all, frozen in time. When they asked where he'd been all those years, he simply said, "I walked into the woods, and then I was home." But home wasn't the place he remembered anymore. And he wasn't the person they remembered either. A woman who once took shelter from a sudden storm and found herself in this old, dimly lit inn. The warmth of the fire, the smell of fresh tea, the hushed voices of other guests she couldn't quite see. It all lulled her into this dreamlike state. But when she woke up, she was lying on damp earth. The walls of the inn had crumbled long ago, completely overtaken by vines. No trace remained of the people who'd welcomed her, except for a single cup of tea that was somehow still warm. An elderly fisherman who talked about a night when the tide pulled back way too far, exposing land that should have been underwater. He said he was drawn by whispers, following a strange procession of lanterns into the mist along this newly revealed shore. When they found him days later, he was just drifting in his boat. His hair had turned completely white, and his eyes showed no recognition of anything around him. All he would say was, "I was beneath the sea, where the city sings." But Kamikakushi isn't just some ancient story lost to time. Even in our modern world, it still happens. Hikers step off marked trails for just a moment and never return. Locals warn tourists about roads that lead nowhere, forests that seem to breathe, places where time itself doesn't flow right. Children vanish for days, but remember nothing when they're found. And then there are those who come back, hollow-eyed, whispering about voices that called their names from somewhere just beyond what we can see. Some people will tell you these are just superstitions. They'll say all these disappearances have logical explanations. People get lost. They don't survive the elements. They fall victim to all too human dangers. But others, they believe the truth is much older and much stranger. They believe there are places in this world that weren't meant for us. Places where ancient forces still linger, where spirits of the forgotten continue to wander. And for reasons we may never understand, some people are chosen. If you ever find yourself deep in Japan's mountains, near some forgotten shrine, or a lonely red torii gate standing in the mist, or maybe on a path that feels too quiet, too empty, just listen. If the wind suddenly changes direction, if the trees seem to whisper to each other, if you hear your own name called from somewhere just beyond your sight, don't answer, don't turn around, and whatever you do, don't follow, because those who do are never seen again.